Hi everyone, and welcome to my next video tutorial, which will be focusing on adding a Captcha for form validation in Django. So as you can see here, we're going to use this package called Django Simple Captcha, and as you can see if we scroll down, this will give you a rather basic idea of what to expect. So you can, of course, modify this to add your own custom challenge, so you can add random chars, simple math, a dictionary word, etc. So the default is going to be letters here, so you'll need to type in the letters accordingly before you can continue to submit your user form. Now you can of course change this as you wish. You can also go ahead and add custom generators, noise and filter functions that can alter the look of the generated image, etc. Alright, and before we do this, what I'm going to do is just create a small mini project here with you guys. So as always, you're more than welcome to skip to the relevant chapter which implements Simple Captcha if you already have a user form in Django. If not, don't worry, I'm going to start from scratch with you. So let's get started. So for those of you that want to code along with me, you're more than welcome to do so, as I'm going to show you now how to set up a basic Django project with a user form. Alright. So first of all, I'm just going to create a folder on my desktop. Okay, and it's open the CMD, so the command prompt. Okay, and we want to cd into this directory here, dev, so cd desktop, then you can say /dev. Okay, and you want to ensure that you install virtual env, so pip install virtual env. Okay, so virtual env is a package that we need to install in order to create virtual environments. So this will be the only package that we install globally. So you can install that. Perfect, so it's been installed. Great, now ensure that you're in your dev directory here, and what you can do now is you can go ahead and you can turn on you can create your virtual environment. So you can say virtual env venv. Now this can be a custom name. You can say my env or whatever you want. So this is the custom part, but you do need to say virtual env to instantiate the command to create your virtual environment. So let's create it. All right. So we can now see our virtual environment was created accordingly. So what we can do is just clear this up by typing cls. And now what we can do is type venv /scripts /activate, and this is going to activate our virtual environment. So you'll see here on the left, if in parentheses you see your virtual environment here within parentheses, that means your virtual environment is now active and you are currently within it. Now the name here will depend on what you named your virtual environment. I called mine venv. Yours may look different, but as long as you've got this here, you're good to go. Now what we can do is install packages within our virtual environment, and this helps us to manage our projects and our packages all in a more fashionable way, you could say, instead of installing it randomly across our machine, which is a bad practice. So now you can say pip install Django. Okay, and this is going to go ahead and install Django within our virtual environment, the package. So it does take a moment. So what I'm going to do is pause the video, and once it's been installed, we can go ahead and move on with the next set of steps. All right, so we can see Django has been installed. Now, if you want to confirm this, let's just clear this up. We can say pip list, and this command will help us to list all the packages within our virtual environment. So in venv, we have a few packages already, and the reason for that is because Django installs a lot of sub packages along with it as well. So that's the reason for that. But that's perfect. So we've got that set. Next, we can go ahead and actually create our Django project within dev. So make sure your virtual environment is active. So you can say Django-admin start project. And you can give your project a name. I'm going to call it Elevate. Perfect. Now to check our folders and directories, we can open up dev. And we can see now we have our virtual environment here on the right, and on the left we have our Django project. Now, of course, this is just my preference. You're more than welcome to do it your own way if you're a pro at Django. So this is just one way of doing it. So that's fine. So now what we can do is use a text editor. So we're going to use our IDE, Visual Studio Code, and we can open this up. So we can open up Visual Studio Code. Okay. Let's just give it a moment. Okay. Now we can go ahead and say File, Open Folder, and we want to select Dev here. So we can select Folder. There we go. So we can now see that directory structure clearer now. So we have our dev directory, our Django project known as Elevate, and our virtual environment here called venv. Now what you can do here is on the top right, you can toggle a panel here. So you can say toggle panel, and you can just click on the arrow here to remove this debug console. And here it shows our directory to our project. So we need to run manage.py to run our Django server. So what we can do is go to that directory. But before we do that, it would be best to turn on our virtual environment first here. So what you can do is say venv /scripts /activate. And there we have it. Now, if you want to deactivate, you can just say deactivate like so, and that will deactivate it for you. All right, so let's activate it again, clear this up. And now we want to cd into Elevate. So we want to change our directory and go to Elevate itself and run python manage.py. So we can say python manage.py run server. There we go, our server is on at the local host. So here I have it already typed in, and if we refresh, we may need to type that in. There we go, we can put in localhost, and there we have it. So we now can see Django was installed successfully, and we are good to go with the next set of steps. All right, perfect. So we can see our application was set up. Now let's continue with our setup. So what we can do next is we can go ahead and in our terminal, we can just say Control-C. And we want to create our Django app here. Okay, and our Django app is going to house our URLs and also going to house some templates and a few other things to boot. So what you want to do is you want to say Django-admin start app, and I'm going to call mine links. You can give it any name you want. Perfect. And now we need to configure our app here, links in settings.py, and link it to our Django app. So you can go to settings.py, you can remove this, and under installed apps, you just want to go ahead and add in your app name, and ours is links. Okay, perfect. We can just move this a bit lower. And what you want to do now is you just want to run your server. So python manage.py run server. Okay, now let's reload, and perfect. We can see it's still working fine. That's great. So we've got our installed app set and ready to go. Perfect, so that's fine. Next, we want to configure our urls.py file. So in links, we can go here and right click, say new file, and we want to add our urls.py file here. So here we want to configure all of our URLs for our links app and not in the main urls.py file. But we anyway need to configure it in the main urls.py file to connect it. So we can go to Elevate, which is our project, go to urls.py. And here we're in the Elevate one, and here we're in locally in our links apps urls.py file. So we can remove all of this. And what we need to do is we need to go ahead and copy some markup here. So we can copy everything in here from Elevate, go to urls.py and links, and we're not going to use the path for the admin. We can leave this empty, and we can remove the admin part here. That's fine. So at least we have some structure here for our URLs in the links app. So we can head over to Elevate, and what we want to do is link all the URLs from this urls.py file in app in Elevate here. So what you can do is you can simply just add some space, and you can say pass, like so. And you want to use the include function. And in parentheses, you want to take in links urls.py. So you can just say links, so the app name .urls. And you can leave a comma right at the end. So you want to get that in place. Now you may need to restart your server. Okay, just to make sure it's still working, and it is. So we can reload, and we can see it's still working perfectly fine. So just keep that in mind. So we've now got it connected. Perfect. So what we can do now is close this up. And here in our URLs, what we want to do is we want to create a view and set up our templates. So next in our app links, we can go ahead and right click, say new folder, and we want to create a templates folder. Now, usually we can just add in our index.html files here manually, but to ensure we don't have namespace errors, it's better to create a subfolder with the name of your app and then create the template. So you can right click again, say new folder, say links, and in links here, we can say new file, and here we're going to create a file. We can create an index.html file called register.html. That's all we need. Perfect. All right, so we've got that done. So here we can just say in h1 tags, register here. Anything you want just for now. So we've got our register.html page in place. Now we can go to our URLs and we need to configure our templates here to render in our view. So we already have a view here by default within our links app. So we can move that here and move it across. And here we just want to create a view. So I'm going to call this def register. We're just going to pass in the request object. And here we can say return render, and we want to return the request, which is going to be based on our register.html file. Now let's check the path. So automatically templates will be seen, so you don't need to add that in. But however, links, this folder won't be seen, and register.html. So we need to refer to these two. Automatically templates is configured. Perfect, you can refer to it like so. So links, register.html. Great, so we can go to our URLs and we want to import this view that we have here. So you can go to your URLs and you can say from import views. Now usually we would have a whole application where we have our home page and then we can go to register to the register or login page, but I'm just showing you functionality so you can add the Captcha. I don't want to waste your time. So that's the reason why we're only having one main page, our home page, as the register page, just to simplify the process for you. So what we can do now is specify our path, and the first will be the route name. I'll leave it, let's set it to, we can leave that empty, that's fine. And then we need to say views.register. So we're setting it to our register view. And then of course we can set the name attribute here. We can leave that empty and just be sure to add a quote at the end. Perfect. So we've got that all set and ready to go. So what we can do now, if we were to head over to our application, make sure it's running. Oh, sorry, we can close this now, actually, the command prompt. And we can restart the server here. And we can say python manage.py run server and reload. And we can see now on our home page here, we're already going to have a registration page, which is fine for our use case. So make sure you've got that all set and ready to go. You've activated everything, you've set it up, and you've got everything as follows. So we've got the basic structure in terms of our URLs, our templates, our views, etc. We've got everything set and ready to go. All right, so make sure you've got that all set. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to create a registration page properly on Django. And once we've got that registration page done, we're going to test it. And then we're going to use a Captcha. And then we're going to test the whole process there so we get a better understanding of what's to come. Right. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to create our user form that's going to house our username, our email, and our password. And we want to be able to submit that data. So we want to create a basic user form using Django's default user creation form class. So what we can do is we can close these up. And in our app, so our app is called links, we can right click, say new file, and we want to call this forms.py. You can close that up. Perfect. So this is what we want to be creating. Right. So the first thing we need to do is we need to import Django's default user creation form for creating our model form. So we can just say from django.contrib.auth.forms import user creation form. Next, we need to make use of the user model, the default user model of Django. So we can go ahead and import it by saying from django.contrib.auth.models import user. Perfect. Now we can go ahead now and actually create our class, and then we're going to inherit and make use of this user creation form. So we can just say class, and you can give it any name you want. I'm going to call it user form. So the class name can be anything. Then you need to inherit this user creation form in order to go ahead and make a form based on the user fields. So we can go ahead and import it and inherit it by saying user creation form. Then what we want to do is we want to set a special set up a special setting here. So we want the email field to be a required field. Now, before we can go ahead and do this manually, we will need to make use of forms. So you can say from Django import forms, and this will allow us to manually go ahead and modify a single field. So that field will be email. So we can say email equals forms. Okay, a dot email field, and we want to set required to true. Okay, now this is where we are getting forms from. We're just passing it over so we can modify email. Perfect. Now we want to say class meta. You can press enter, and actually we can go back here to the top and we can say model is equal to the user model. Then you want to specify the fields, so you can go ahead and add this within parentheses. So we'll have username, so you can choose whether double or single quotes. I'm going to use double quotes. We have username, email, and then we're going to have password 1, which is the password we want to use, and password 2, which is our verification check. All right, so that is our form. I'll zoom out so you can see. So this is the user form that we need to go ahead and construct and make use of. So make sure you've got that set and ready to go. Right, so let's continue. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to make our migration. So this user model is actually valid. So what we can do is we can head over to the debug console, stop the server, and you can say Python manage.py, make migrations for now. Okay, and then Python manage.py, migrate. Now you don't need to say make migrations. I just say it just for good practice, but you just need to actually migrate. Okay, so these are our default, as you can see, installed apps from settings.py just being set up. So that's good to go. Perfect, so let's just move this down. Great, so we have our forms done. Now let's go ahead to our views. So in our Explorer, we can get views, drag that here. And all we want to do is we want to go ahead and import this this class here. So the class here user form in views.py. So to do that, let's remove this. We can just say from dot forms import, and you want to import based on that class name that you said, and here it's called user form. So we'll import based on that. Perfect. We've got that set and ready to go. Right, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to set up our view here. So we can close forms.py. Actually, we can keep it open. Let's just close the Explorer and we can zoom in. Yep, okay, so let's set up the view. So this is what we're going to do. So first of all, we want to check if we're making a post request from our register.html page. We will put in the register.html page logic in a moment, and then we'll compare the two. So you want to first say if the request dot method is equal to that of a post request, you want to go ahead and you want to say form. You want to create a variable called form, and you want to assign it to this class here that we defined, which is user form. And we want to say request dot post. So essentially what we're doing is we're creating a variable called form, which is going to house our user form, which is consisting of our fields, username, email, password 1 and password 2, and we want to post all of the data entered in those fields accordingly. We want to send a post request with all of that data. And then what we want to do is we want to check if that form is valid. So if this form is valid here, we can say if form dot is underscore valid. Okay, we want to then say user is equal to form, .save. So we want to save our form. So you don't explicitly need to say user here. You can actually take this out. So I don't want to confuse you guys. You just want to save that form, and this essentially pushes the data to our database, form.save. So this .save method is essentially what happens here. Now, once this is a success, we can just say return, and we would need to import the HTTP response method. So what you can do here is say from Django.http import HTTP response, and we want to return here then that HTTP response, and we want to say something like user registered, just like that. So we just at least have something being rendered out for a success. Now let me zoom out so you can see all of this. So you can see as of this moment, okay, we have our imports here. We are importing our form, checking if it's a post request. If it is, we're going to set our form to whatever is in that field and send a post request. If that form is valid, we can confirm the post request and return a HTTP response. Now, what we need to do next is we need to set a blank form. So before this request.method equals post is sent, we just want to show our fields accordingly in this page here. We just want to show our fields such as username, email, password, etc. We want to show it blank for the moment. So that's if we don't send the post request. So by default, form is going to be equal to it's going to be equal to user form. And we can leave the parentheses as empty. We just want to here render out our form. Okay, next thing that we want to do is we want to pass out our widgets. So our widgets would be our username widget, email widget, password1 and password2 widget. And these widgets are technically our fields, our input fields. And we want to send it now from form, this variable that we assigned, and pass it through to our links register.html page. We want to pass through that username, email, password1, password2 fields to our index, to our register.html page, so that we can see it here on the page. So to do that, we can create a context dictionary. So we can say context equals, and you can give it any name that you want. So we just referring to a key value pair here. So I'm just going to say register form. And that's going, and the value that we're taking in is the form. So this is the key that we're going to reference in our HTML. And this is the value which we're obtaining from user form, which is going to consist of username, email, password1, and password2. And we're then going to render this in our register.html page. So we can just pass it accordingly and just say context. And we're just going to pass it in that register.html page. All right. So that's our review done. So we've got that out of the way. Next, we can set up our register.html page. So what we can do is go to templates, and here under the links directory, we can open register.html. And we can just add up that necessary markup accordingly. So the first thing that we want to do is we can keep this h1 here. What we can do now is just improve the markup a bit. So let's actually clean this up. Right. So let's restructure this register.html page actually. So what we can do for good practices is we can just put in the doc type at the top. Then we can set our HTML. Okay. And what we can do is just add in a heading tag. Set the title to say registration page. Okay, that's fine. And what we can do now is we can just dive right in and we can create a container. So we can say div class container, and we're going to say container py-5. That's fine. Okay, so we're just creating just a class, and here we can just put in our header tag, and here we can say register here. Okay. And next we can just create the form itself. So we can just say form method, we're saying post. Now, depending on what we say here as the method, so if we're making a post request, that means we are sending data to our server, so to our database. So if it were a GET request, it would be for me a GET request. And this is how we capture in our views.py this request here. So we're checking first if the request.method from our register.html page here is based on a post request. We can continue with the process here and, post the data and then save it and push it to our database. Right. So what we can do now is we can just pass in the CSRF token. So whenever you're submitting data with Django, you need to pass in your CSRF token. That's essential to prevent CSRF attacks. Then what you can do now is you can pass in our widgets or our fields, such as our username, our email and password fields, according to the key we stated here, which is referencing to the value forum. So the key here is register forum. So that means in our register.html page, we can refer it to register forum, and essentially we can just leave it like that for now. Then the last thing we need is a button to actually submit our data. So we can just say button, and here we can just say class, and we can say button. We don't really need to put anything here. We can just leave it as so, that's fine. And we can just set the type. Okay, excuse me. So the type is going to be that of a submit button. And I think that's pretty much, that's all we need actually. We just need that for our button, and you can just say here register now, or you can just say something like create your account. Or yeah, create your account is fine. Okay, so this is our form essentially. So you can have a good look. I'll zoom out for you. So you can see here, we're just creating basic HTML logic here, setting a header tag. Then we're just creating a div here, which we're encapsulating our heading and setting up our form accordingly. And register form here is going to house those input values that we have. And we'll see that in just a moment. We're making a post request. We're just creating a button here. The text is going to show create your button, and it's based on the submit button. So that will work well when we go ahead and in our views decide to send that post request over. All right, so what we can do now is do a test. So in your command line here, you can just say python manage.py, run server. Okay, just give it a moment. There we go, it's running. So if you refresh your page now, you should see we have our form here. Now this looks quite ugly and it's quite much mixed and matched, but not to worry. What we're going to do is we're going to use Django crispy forms to make this look a bit nicer and just to set it up in a better way. So what you can do now is just refresh the page and just make sure that you've at least got the fields populating here. So you can see the username, email, password fields, all the widgets are now passed in accordingly. And that is because we went ahead and passed it, or we are rendering it out via register.html, since we went ahead and passed it accordingly through our context dictionary, as you can see. All right, so that's how we got that into place. So we can keep this open for now. Now we need to go ahead and install Django crispy forms as follows. Right, so we are going to use one of the older versions, and that is version 1.14.0. The reason why we're not using version 2.0 is because it requires a lot of configurations. So just bear with me on this. So what we need to do is install this in our virtual environment so you can copy it, but don't install it just yet. Just follow what I'm doing, and you want to head over to your terminal. If your server's on, just say Control-C and stop it. And in your virtual environment, you can paste the following, but you want to say equals equals, and then you want to put it in accordingly 1.14.0 because we want to install version 1.14.0 right here. So you want to go ahead and add that in. And once you've added that in, go ahead and press enter. And there we go, so it's installed. So you can say pip list if you want to verify. So we can move this up and we can just check. There we go, Django crispy forms, perfect. Great. All right, so all we need to do now is we need to set this up in our settings.py file. We need to add it to installed apps and set up our crispy template pack. So what we can do is head over to settings.py, and here in your settings, you just want to add in, let me zoom it in for you. You want to add in crispy forms, add in your comma here. So add in that crispy forms app here. Then you want to set your crispy template pack. So you can say crispy underscore template pack. And we are going to set this to bootstrap 4. Now you can of course change your version depending on what you feel. So crispy template pack and have crispy forms here. Next, you can head over to your register.html page and you want to load your crispy forms tags here up top. So up the top here, you can just simply go ahead and in curly braces, you can say load crispy underscore forms underscore tags and close that curly brace. And then here by your register form, you can just add the following symbol and you can just say crispy. Except then you can run your server. So python manage.py run server. Great. And head over to your form and you can refresh, and now you can see the order has changed and everything's looking a bit nicer, a bit cleaner. We just wanted to style it up and get it into shape. Okay, so that's how you can set up Crispy Forms with version 1.14. Just make sure that you set up 1.14. You can't install this one or else you're going to get errors, because there's a different way in which you can go ahead and check it out. If you want more information on Crispy Forms, you can head over to the home page, open the link in a new tab, and it's going to take you to the Crispy Forms GitHub page, where you can read a little bit more here in terms of Crispy Forms, etc. All right, so we've got that in place. So well done on getting onto this point. Right. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to enter in a username, email, and password and create our account. So go ahead and enter in the username, email, and password. So go ahead and do just that. Right, so once you've entered in your username, email, and password, you can go ahead and say create your account. And it should then say user registered. So everything was a success and we're good to go. Perfect. So we've got that set and ready to go. So we can just go ahead and return back to our page here. So we've got our registration page working and set and ready to go. Now, to confirm this is working, we can always check our admin page. So to do that, we would first need to create an admin user. So I'm going to zoom out here. And we can go ahead and just say python manage.py create super user admin. Email we can leave blank, just enter in a password. Perfect, super user created. Now rerun your server and you want to head over to Django admin, so the default Django admin page. Great, so here we can just go ahead and put in admin, and you want to log in with your admin user's credentials. Right, once you've entered in your credentials, you're more than welcome to log in. Head over to users, and you should now be able to see that you have your admin user and test one. This is the user that just got registered and created. So if I were to zoom in, you can now see that we have those two users in place. Perfect. So we know that the registration functionality is working perfectly fine, and we have that all set and in place. Now, just to give you some extra emphasis here, in our views, the reason why we saw user registered is because we returned this HTTP response accordingly. All right. So we've got that all in place. So what we can do for now is just minimize this console, and we can close everything up here accordingly, because the next set of steps is going to involve us setting up simple Captcha here. So this is the next set of steps that we want to do and the main purpose of this video. Right, so let's get started with setting up the Captcha for Django. So what you can do is go ahead and copy the installation here, and you can head over to your terminal, and in your virtual environment, go ahead and paste it in accordingly. Okay, so let's install Django Simple Captcha. Just give it a moment. Perfect. Great. The next thing that we need to do is we need to add Django Simple Captcha to our installed app. So you can head over to your settings.py file. And here under installed apps, you can go ahead and just add it in accordingly. So it will just be called Captcha. All right, it will be called Captcha like so. And the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and say python manage.py migrate, and migrate all of the database files that are associated with our Captcha app. So you can go ahead and migrate them. There we go, it's been migrated, perfect. Next, we want to go ahead and add in Captcha to our main urls.py file. So you can head over to urls.py, and it should be the one where you've set your admin URL. So it will be in Elevate, in my case, urls.py. And we can get this from the documentation accordingly. So what we can do is open up the documentation here so we can read the documentation. So just give it a moment. Okay, and as you'll see, it's going to show you a small preview here of what it will look like, as we saw before. And you want to go to installation here, and it's going to give us that URL. And that URL here, as we can see, is in step 4. So we need to add an entry to our urls.py file. I can zoom in here for you guys, and we can add this in right here. So here's the path URL that we need to have. Okay, I'm going to put it just down here. So here's our Captcha. Okay, perfect, we've got that set. And if we want to add this to a form, so we have a user form, we need to use the Captcha field. So it's very simple. All we need to do is add this import the Captcha field in our forms.py file in links. So we can go ahead and copy that. And after you've added that into URLs, you want to go to your app, which is called links, and you can head over to forms, and you can go ahead and import this right here at the top. So you want to import this Captcha field accordingly. So that will be in your forms.py of your app. So make sure first of all that you added in the URL for Captcha. That's step 1. And then step 2 is to go ahead and import the Captcha field in your app's forms.py file. You want to add it here to the top right, at the top right there. Okay, so make sure you've got this in place and set and ready to go. Now, the next thing that you want to do is you want to add in your Captcha field accordingly. So as you can see here, we have our fields, username, email, password 1, password 2. What we need to do is we need to now add in that Captcha field, and we can add this in a model form. So as you can see here, we can add this in a model form. So we can copy the following. So this is the field itself. And as you can see, it's just below our class. So what we can do is just add this accordingly right here. So you can put it just below email. So this is the Captcha field, and that's going to form part of this user creation form according, which is username, email, password 1, and password 2. It's going to be part of that whole solution. So make sure you add that in accordingly like so. And then you can just say python manage.py run server, just to make sure it's running fine. Great, so now you can head over to your registration page, refresh. And now you can see we have that Captcha loaded in place here. So it's all set and ready to go. All right, so it gets loaded automatically with your fields as long as they are embedded in your user form class. It will be embedded in the default user creation form along with username, email, password 1, and password 2. And that's how you can go ahead and set that up accordingly. So let me demonstrate for you quickly. So all you have to do first of all is enter in the username, email, and password, and then I'm going to show you the Captcha part. So go ahead and enter in those fields. Right, so once you've entered in your username, email, and password, you'll need to enter in the Captcha. Now, if you skip the Captcha and say create your account, you're going to see here it's going to force you to enter in the field. So you need to click in this field and see what you see here in the Captcha. You can make this bigger. So what you can do is just say C, and we see FF, and we see O, and it will be in caps, and you can say create your account. And there we go, user registered, all perfect. So that's how you can set up your Captcha. Now, in terms of the additional functionality that you can go ahead and set, so what you can go ahead and do is you can check out the documentation. I will put it in the description below, and you can read a little bit more about the settings that you can set up. So essentially what you can do is you can go ahead and read a little bit more in terms of the configuration, rendering, adding to the form. You can read a little bit more about passing arguments. And you can go ahead and read a little bit more about passing in, for example, a math challenge or a particular word. You can even make it larger as well. That's something that you can also go ahead and do. You can make this Captcha a bit larger. Now, just to verify that that user was actually created, what we can do is head over to our admin page. We can enter in our admin credentials. Then we can log in. Head over to users. And there's our user created. Perfect, and set and ready to go. So we've got that user created and everything was a success. Now, of course, what you'd need to do is make this look a bit nicer. Of course, I just wanted to give you a rough idea. So style it, make it nice. I wouldn't recommend returning a HTTP response, rather redirect to another page. So you don't have that confirm form resubmission thing that you saw earlier. So best to make it nice and to your own styling. I just wanted to give you a rough markup so you at least have the raw background of how to set this up. And as you can see here, we get that get request of that Captcha with the following URL, as you can see down here, which is set here accordingly and generates that random image according to this random token that gets sent. Alright, so that's it guys on how to implement a Captcha. So this is very helpful if you want to ensure that you prevent any abusive web requests or bots that attempt to submit your user form. So it's also good for checking human validation, and it's not like some robot or bot that's in place, or to prevent abusive web requests. So if someone is trying to spam lots of requests, this helps to lessen the impact because they need to solve a Captcha, and that does take time. So you're going to protect your application a little bit more in that sense. All right, guys, so that's it. And as always, thank you for the support and see you next time.